Distinguished global youth leaders, ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome. My name is Tanya Nikhotsova, and I'm a young professional from Eurasia and your moderator for today's webinar. Before we start the webinar, we have a few announcements to make. First, there will be translations from English to Korean, Spanish, Portuguese, and French, but unfortunately, there will be no Japanese translation for today. Another point is that if you have any question throughout the webinar, feel free to add it to the Q&A box. We are happy to welcome you to the webinar hosted by the Young Professionals team of Women's Federation for World Peace International. In this webinar, Women's Federation for World Peace International would like to focus on the role of youth in the family and society in enhancing and contributing to the culture of the community and society. Now, I would like to take the opportunity to introduce our panelists and ask them to share with us their thoughts on the topic, role of youth in family and society. So let us welcome the first speaker, Ms. Joy Ikomoinen. Ms. Ikomoinen is an author and a business leader responsible for the strategic direction across her organization to create, deliver, and capture value. She has over 10 years of experience in management roles, with her career spanning the third sector, government, and private sector organizations. She is the founder and director of the award-winning e-commerce brand Tombi.com. She is also the executive director of the Living Joys Foundation, an NGO that provides a platform for training and development, support and mentoring, and facilitating educational advancement for girls and young women. She has spoken, written, and presented on issues of girls' protection, body positivity, women's role in peace building, and women's leadership and participation in policy and governance. She is passionate about supporting young women to thrive and develop into good citizens, and has also worked as a youth policy advisor to the Nigerian government, where she advocated for a new pathway for young girls who dream about following and expressing their creative calling. She is an alumnus of the London School of Economics Business School and holds an MBA in International Business. Ms. Ikomoinen, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you, I appreciate, and I'm really honored to be here today to speak about youth because it's my passion, it's my work to speak about young people and the value that they add to the economy, the value that they add to society. So I will be speaking here about what the youth's role is in family and in society. So thank you very much for having me. Speaking about youths are very, very important in every organization in the world today because youths are the future of they are our future, they are the future, the next generation. That's what youths are. So they're really important to day-to-day living. They're really important to society. They're important to businesses. They're important to politics. They're important in every genre, in every organization, because they are our future. And in the family role as well, the youth play a very important role in family as well, because they're full of energy, they're full of ideas, they're full of futuristic plans. So because the youth have got all that, it's a good thing to include them in whatever it is that we do as a society, even as a family, because the future of that family is dependent on the youths. Most of these youths today, they're not being given enough responsibility to be who they can be, and most of them are not. They've not been put in places of authority where they can exert the authority that they've got. Most of these youths have been sidelined for most of their young lives because a lot of the older adults think that they have nothing to bring to the table. But that's not true. So today we will be speaking first about family and their role in the family. What is a family? A family is defined as a group of two or more related by birth, marriages, by adoption. That's what a family is. Although in the current state, there are so many other definitions of family, but now we're going to be centered on the nuclear family. And this people that are related by birth and related by marriage and adoption who live together is a family. And as a family, that's the first place that the youth recognizes themselves. First, as a child who has been born into a particular family, and then secondly, they see that family as their first point of call before they go out into the world. So for that youth, the family, which is, quote and unquote, their first point of call, where they were born into or where they were adopted into, that family is what shapes them. That family shapes this youth to be who they will be in the future. So the role of the family is really, really important in the lives of youth, because in the family, they learn about morals. In the family, they learn about self-discipline. In the family, they learn about love. If they don't have love in the family, there's no way they're going to give love outside. So the family is really the owners of the beginning and the beginning of the life of a youth, first as a child. And that's why the family comes in very, very important. Because if that family does not train that child with love, with attention, with loyalty, with discipline, that child is not going to grow up to become a better youth. So for a child to be a better youth in the future, that child needs to be trained in the family, in a family unit. That's the first point of call they know before they even get into their first day in school. So that family is really, really important in the life of youths, as having this family support during times of tremendous changes in their life, changing from children to adolescents, from adolescents to being youths, to being young adults. It prepares them for the future. So family play a very supportive role in the lives of youth. And it's really, really important, because this supportive role kind of like, it changes the trajectory of the child's life, of the youth's life. It dictates their trajectory in life. So parents in every family, nuclear or otherwise, they play a very big role in the lives of young people. And not just showing them love, not just sending them to schools, paying their school fees. Parents and family provides protection to the youths, and it gives them this huge responsibility as well as youths, because when they know that being in a particular family, they have a role to play, as a brother, as a sister, either as a first child or the last child. As they grow in that family, they grow in love, showing love to their siblings, showing love to their parents, and building this child to grow up to become a responsible citizen starts with the family. And that's why the family comes first and is really, really important in the life of a youth, in the life of anyone. As we say, even as adults, we think about the world, we see our family as our safe place. The family is where you go to, where you feel safe in your life. If the world turns against you, you always know you've got a mother, you always know you've got a father, you always know you've got a brother or a sister or a cousin that you can confide in. So the family plays a very vital role in the life of youths. If the family is not right, then it tells on the life of the youths, and that's where they become nuisance to society, because the family didn't shape them well in the way that it should be. And so when the family is disjointed and then they go out into the world, they become a problem to society, and we don't want that. That's why we always say the family comes first. The family is really, really important in shaping the life of everyone. And when they get to that stage where they now have to go out into the world, then it becomes important that they've already had that prior knowledge and prior understanding of what the world is out there, and prior discipline and prior love, which is really, really important, and peace as well. So when they go out into the world, then they contribute to society. So the family is the first point of call. And then my next point of call is the society. So when the family has shaped this youth and then they go into society, then they can contribute whatever it is they've learned over time into society. Then they can make their impact in society. But when the family is wrong, or when the family is not there to direct the youth in the direction that they should go, then they become a menace to society. And that's where they become involved in cults, and then get involved in gangs, and then get involved in drugs, and go in the ways that becomes a problem to society. So before they become a problem to society, the family has that very, very first advantage to shape the life of a youth, to shape the life of that child before they go into society. So when that child has been shaped, when their life has been shaped, and when they've learned all that they need to learn in their family and in school, but the family first and then in school, then they go into society, and then that's when they positively impact society. That's when they put back what they've learned over time in the society. And that's why youths are really, really important in any society, because they come with diverse knowledges, they come with diverse discipline, they come with diverse understanding and love and experiences from every family, and then they bring that into the society, into the community. And when they bring that into the community, that's when they contribute to the society, that's when they contribute to the community. So that's why it's really important for us not to sideline youths in anything we do, especially young ladies and young boys. I call them young ladies and young boys because they're still learning a lot in the world. And so when they come in, we shouldn't sideline them. We should involve them in anything that we're doing, as a society, as a community, because they've got so much to offer. They've got the energy, they've got the knowledge, they're very sharp and witted in their thinking and their understanding, with the current scenario now in the world, the advent of AI technology and chat GTP, the youths are the ones in the forefront of this technology. They are the ones that are going to use this technological advancement in the future. So the youth is really, really important in our society today. And I enjoy everyone that the contribution of youths is really important. Like in the UK recently, it's just been recognized in Wales, actually, that the youths have been, they've put it into law that the youths will be part of parliament. They have a youth parliament where the youth contribute to the society by forming a parliamentary unit. So it's really important to put these youths in anything that we do as a society. Apart from that one, the youths also contribute to society by bringing in their energy, bringing in everything that they've got. They contribute to society by being in politics. They contribute to society by being in businesses, starting businesses. They contribute to the growth of every society. If you look at most societies today, the population of the youth is the highest percentage compared to any other population, compared to the elderly, compared to the children. The youth is usually the highest of percentages. That's to show you how important they are to society. So if they treat them well, then they become the future leaders, that we hope for. If they're treated rightly, then they become the future business leaders. They become the future politicians that we hope them to be. So that's really, really important to every one of us, wherever we find ourselves, that every child today becomes the youth of tomorrow. They become the future of tomorrow. So they need to be treated in that respect, if I may say that, because these youths are the future of tomorrow. We need to treat them right, to give them whatever it is that they need that will help them in their future, so they don't become a problem to society. And in conclusion, I'm going to say that apart from the important role that they play to society and the community, these youths, they help their parents in the future. They are the ones that look after their parents. When the parents becomes old and feeble and cannot do things for themselves. These youths are the ones that look after their parents. You know, we as youths look after our parents because they've gotten to that stage where they cannot do things for themselves. So that's why the youth needs to be carried along in everything that we do, everything we do as a society, everything we do as a family. We need to put the youths first, because they are really, really important. As long as much as we value the lives of children as well, but when they get to that adolescent stage, that's when all the values that we need to learn as citizens needs to be instilled in the lives of youth. And when that is instilled right in the lives of these youth, in the family, then they become an addition to society, then they become an added advantage to society, and that helps society to grow to what it should be in the future. And these youths, as we know, as I've said before, they are the future of tomorrow. So we should not let them down at all, and we should not look down on them, because so many a times youths have been looked down upon, and it's a shame really, and it's sad that in some society they do not recognize the impact of these youths. But the moment we start treating them right and recognize their impact and recognize their contribution to society and recognize how important they are, then they give back to us, they give back to society, they give back the love that they have learned, they give back the discipline that they have learned, they give back the education, the knowledge that they have learned, they give back. And that's what life is all about. It's all about give and take. If we put in them the right manners, if we put in them the right discipline, then in the future, we'll expect to draw from them what we have put in them. So as a family, it's really important that that is put, that the children and the youths are valued, because when they know that they've got value from where they've come from, then they can add value in the future. Then they can add value wherever they find themselves. And in that way, they will not become a problem to society. And that's really, really important as a family and as a society and as a youth themselves. The role they play, it's a very important role that they play, which shouldn't be taken for granted. And I would say that anywhere we find ourselves working with young people, we should always work with them, collaborate with them, you know, find out from them what it is that they need, find out from them what, you know, try to get ideas from them, because there are so many things they've got to give to us as a society, but they've been played down on several times. And it's a shame that that has been happening. But I think it's time that the world really recognize the value of youths in our society, in our families, and in the world at large. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Missy. Good morning. It was a wonderful speech, and it is truly important that you spoken about youth as the next future for tomorrow. And also it is indeed true that being a responsible citizen is something that starts from a family. And also you spoke about the recognition that we have for the youth nowadays, and that we need to collaborate. And it just melts my heart to hear these words from you. And I'm really grateful because it was a wonderful speech. Thank you very much again. We'll move on. I would like to remind you that we'll have the Q&A session after the presentation of all panelists. So please feel free to send all your questions to the Q&A box. I would also like to add that fortunately now we have a Japanese translation. Our next speaker is Dr. Yaju Wu, praised for her technical quality, beauty of sound, and above all, the projection of an uncommon musical sensibility. Violinist Dr. Wu has been invited to perform around the globe in prestigious halls such as Carnegie Hall, Smetana Hall, Musikverein, Berlin Philharmonie, Elbphilharmonie Hamburg, amongst others, and has recorded for EMI Classics and ECM Records. Winner of the Korean National Award, Outstanding International Musician of the Year by the Arts Critics Association, as well as the Artist of the Year by the Gangwon Foundation. Dr. Wu was appointed as Honorary Ambassador of the city of Chuncheon, where she serves as the artistic director of New York in Chuncheon Music Festival. Dr. Wu was a Fulbright scholar in Germany, where she was a researcher at the Eisenhower House and an Academy member of Ensemble Modern. Born in Freiburg, Germany, Yeju moved to the USA at age 10 and currently resides in New York City. She received her doctorate degree from Stony Brook University. Dr. Yeju Wu, we are eager to hear your speech.
Hello, everyone. It's morning in New York. I know we're tuning in from various parts of the country. I'm very happy to be speaking today about the role of music in our society. So I will now be sharing my screen. Okay, so I will skip the part about myself since this was already introduced. So I have been performing in various settings for about 20 plus years. And I thought about choosing concerts and projects that best fit to our topic today. And that goes back to year 2004, when I was invited to perform at the United Nations headquarters in New York. It was an event hosted by UNICEF, and it was a concert put together in memory of Sir Peter Ustinov. And for those of you who don't know Peter Ustinov, he was an actor, novelist, playwright, director, and a commentator, amongst many others, and also was a UNICEF Goodwill Ambassador from 1968 to 2004. So this was the first concert that made me really think about an artist's role in society, because not only by hearing Ustinov's stories, but I was exposed to people who were making real efforts to make the world a better place. So thinking back, I think really had a huge impact on me. And I started asking myself what my role would be as an artist in this world. In 2008, I had a rare opportunity to visit North Korea, Pyongyang. And I have several other pictures of myself performing and interacting with the musicians there, but I couldn't find it. So this is the one photo that I could find, which is in front of the Liberation Tower in Pyongyang. And there, it was, of course, it was a special occasion for me. My grandparents from my mother's side both came down from the south, from the north during the Korean War. So I grew up hearing about the north side. So I traveled there very excited and with an open heart. And I think what was most important about this trip for me was the fact that I got to collaborate with the musicians there. And with music, you don't need words to communicate. And I still think back to this time, like the moment on stage when I really felt this special connection with the musicians there. Of course, I could talk to them during our free times, and we would talk about our hometown, because I come from a city called Chuncheon, and this is the capital of the only province, Gangwon province, that's split between North and South Koreas. And one of the musicians there, their parents happen to be from the south side of this province. So it was really, it was quite amazing to be able to talk about that. But music making, you didn't need to communicate in that way, but just through playing. And I think like at that point, nothing else mattered. And I think this was one of those moments when I really felt the power of music that connects people. 2018, I was invited to perform at the demilitarized zone in South Korea. And this was quite a spiritual occasion for me, because we were all there with this fervent wish for peace between North and South Koreas, and also for the two countries to be united one day. So it was an honor for me to have been able to contribute my music making to this. But also I was able to perform the music of a Korean German composer, Lee Sang-yoon, who represents the unity between both Koreas, which leads to my Fulbright Award in Germany in 2019. I was there to research Lee Sang-yoon's music in Berlin, but I was also an Academy member of Ensemble Modern. This is a new music ensemble, one of the leading ensembles in Europe, and they are based in Frankfurt. So I was going back and forth between Berlin and Frankfurt. I'll tell you a little bit about Lee Sang-yoon. He was born in 1917, and this is pre-North and South Koreas. So that's why for him, Korea was just Korea, even after they split. And his music really sounds like no other, because he was a pioneer in combining the Korean traditional sounds with the Western modern compositional technique. And there's this crazy story about him. In 1967, he was accused of being a North Korean spy because he visited North Korea to visit a friend a couple of years before that. So he was abducted by the South Korean secret police in the middle of the street in Berlin, was brought back to South Korea, and was sentenced to death. And so the artists hearing this news, hundreds of them wrote a petition. And this petition went through the West German government. So the West German government was able to release Yoon out of jail. So Yoon was brought back to Germany. And shortly after that, he acquired the German citizenship, and unfortunately couldn't go back home until he died in 1995, because his accusations weren't fully released. So it's quite a sad story, but until this day, he is respected as one of the most important composers of all time throughout the world. And working with Ensemble Modern, because they knew Yoon personally, I really got to understand his music at an intimate level. So what I play, so this was the most intriguing part about studying his music, because what I play is Western music. What I play is Western classical music, and it's a Western instrument, right? And his music is Western music, but he uses the Korean idiom. So in order to really understand his music, I actually had to study Korean traditional music. So by studying his music, I actually got to discover, better understand my own roots. And this actually gave me a sense of belonging in the classical music world. And this really gave me the purpose to discover more Korean composers and see what they have to say with their music. And since then, I've been an advocate of not just his music, but other Korean composers and also other Asian composers, because I feel like they they kind of widen the perspective of the Western classical music. Just 2 months ago, I was in Tunisia teaching the students from all over the country. And this was a 2-week intensive where I taught individual and group lessons. And we were in the mountains of Bematier. And it was something similar to my trip to North Korea, in the sense that I could feel the special connection with the students there, because we were all there with the same purpose of making music and trying to understand this art form. And there's something special about being in the mountains with just this one purpose of crafting our art. And you don't think about anything else. You wake up, you eat breakfast, you practice, you have lessons, lunch, and then you're practicing again. You're only talking about music. And in the evenings, there's jam sessions, and they were sharing their own music, their Arabic music, and we were just like having such a great time all together. So through that, even though 2 weeks, you could say it's not that long of a time, I really felt a special connection. We bonded. And for them, they were saying that, for the students, they were saying how this is something that they look forward to every year. So they're very thankful that we were there to teach them music. But I think in return, I came back having, in a way, received so much more. And yeah, it's just 2 months ago, but I feel like it was just yesterday. And I do feel that it really made my heart full to have been able to give what I could, and also just receive so much more from all their passion and love for music. The last thing I wanted to talk about is the New York Chuncheon Festival that I founded in my hometown, Chuncheon, in 2013. This is a chamber music festival that brings musicians from New York every year. And I wanted to connect the two cities that I lived in. So Chuncheon, my hometown, and New York, where I'm currently based in. We perform world-class chamber music concerts, but also introduce contemporary works, because what we do is we always perform the music of the past, but I feel it's important to also introduce the music of today to understand how the world is developing. We also work with this local students from the youth orchestra there. But also there is this cultural exchange aspect to it, because the musicians, we don't only perform in concert halls, but we go to different locations, like traditional locations, one of them being a Buddhist temple. And the concert is attended by the resident monks. So the musicians also get to experience the Korean culture, and the intermission is replaced by Korean traditional dance or music. So some of the musicians, they compose as well, they're composers, and they have written some works influenced and inspired by all the things that they saw, like the music that they heard and the sceneries and the people they interacted. So it's been something that I've been very passionate about since, this year is our 10-year anniversary. And I feel like through this festival, I was able to really understand my hometown better, and also understand the musicians and vice versa. And I'm very much looking forward to going back to Chuncheon in about a month to celebrate our 10-year anniversary. So yeah, role of music in our society. I think on a personal level, making music has been a safe space for me, I know we just heard about family being the safe space. And of course, I always have had that. But I grew up actually away from my parents. I moved to the States alone at the age of 9. So making music was something that was immediately available to me. And I think having that really made myself more grounded. And I think when you're more grounded and know yourself better, it gives you more space to give and also to understand others better. And as performer, when we're playing, we're constantly trying to give. But what's also interesting is that the audience, even though they're just sitting and listening, as performers, we're also receiving. And I think that's because the audience, they're making an effort to understand. They're making an effort to understand what the musician has to say, what the music has to say to them. So there is always this mutual effort to try and understand and give and take. And with that, I think creates this empathy. And empathy is, I think, one of the most important things in this world. And that just, when people have that, when the society has that, I think it just makes the world a better place. So yeah, I'm hoping that more people understand the importance of it, and I will continue and try find concerts and projects teaching opportunities to kind of continue making the world a better place with this effort. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wu, for sharing about your artistic way as a musician. It is truly inspiring that we hear about something that you are so passionate about. And as you mentioned, you've found a sense of belonging there. And it is truly important that you feel it as a safe space, and that all of the youth, all of the people all around the world, they can also feel it by creating this give and take with music, with the different musicians all around the world. And it is truly inspirational to hear that. Thank you very much again for that.
Thank you.
So let us move on to our next speaker, which is Miss Lydia Tezima. Miss Tezima is a Melbourne-born and raised Ethiopian conversationalist, creative youth program facilitator, cultural consultant, community leader, and the founder of a creative media platform Below the Surface. Dedicated to carving out a unique and versatile career as a global thought leader and changemaker, Lydia divides her time between community work and her love for presenting, hosting, emceeing, and panel moderating. Co-host of the Voices of Australia podcast, she joins Anthea Hancock, CEO of the Scanlon Foundation Research Institute, to explore what a socially cohesive society in Australia looks like from diverse perspectives. Extremely passionate about making sense of the world and inspiring the next generation to be purpose and change-driven, Ms. Tezima uses the power of connection, authentic conversation, creating in all its forms, and her deep interest in social justice to leave her unique mark on the world. So let us welcome Ms. Tezima to the stage today.
Well, hello, everyone. Yes, my name is Lydia Tezima. I'm in Melbourne in Australia, so it's currently 9:39 p.m. on a Saturday night. This is not how I would usually spend my Saturday night, but it's a deep honor to be a part of such a meaningful conversation. I'm just going to share my screen. Make sure I share the right one. All right. So I was, given the opportunity, I guess, to speak about the role of youth in family and community. And I think I could bring a different perspective to joy, which is a great thing, I think, because I'm speaking as someone who has recently turned 27. So I guess it's not long ago that I was a youth myself, and I'm also a youth worker. So I do work directly in like a youth center setting, facilitating different programs with youth. So I think, yeah, I'll start by introducing myself a bit more. I'm an Ethiopian woman, but I was actually born and raised in this country in Australia. There's been many waves of migration to Australia, which makes Australia a very multicultural nation. But I guess East Africans really started migrating in the late 90s. So my parents came in 91, and then I was born in 96. So yeah, I really do embrace the duality of my identity as an African woman who is still very much connected to her roots, and, you know, has been back home and goes back home, but also as an Australian woman, because I guess I was born and bred here. So I just move this to the side. I think it's, yeah, something that I'll note in terms of how I felt as a youth is that I was given the opportunity, and I think just to sort of speak to what Joy said, because I really do agree that when love is cultivated within the family household, and also in turn, like a love for yourself and embracing yourself, that then reflects outwards into the community in a really positive way. And I guess my parents, I was blessed to have parents who, you know, were very active in our lives, and very positive figures, but also who really did their best to expose us to different opportunities so that we could explore ourselves. Because I think that's what's really important for young people, is to be given an opportunity, irrespective of financial circumstances within the family, because it always is changing, to explore themselves so that they can learn what they love and what they can then go on to be passionate about. And I put this example here because I went to a high school where I was blessed to get a general excellence scholarship of 50%. It was a really expensive school that my parents couldn't afford. And my dad was actually studying again in the country, because after my parents left Kenya, which is where they met after leaving Ethiopia, their degrees weren't as valid in terms of being able to practice it in this country. So my dad spent 4 years in a different state while my mom was working in a hospital, and they just really valued education nonetheless. So they did their best to send us to the school. And at the end, my mom actually owed $24,000 to the high school, because I'm one of 3 girls. So I've got a sister that's 2 years younger than me and a sister who's 2 years older than me. But the principal of the school actually waived that $24,000 that was owing, and he literally mentioned because of how we contributed to the school in terms of being a part of you know, the co-curriculum activities, being a part of the theater projects and stuff. And my sister was school captain and she was a singer. And so it's true that when young people do contribute, it gives society and community a reason to also extend their hand as well. So it works hand in hand. I've already introduced myself. Yeah, so I do a number of things. I pretty much play to my skill set. But yeah, I've got diverse academic experience. And then I just was really someone who didn't want to be a 9-to-5 worker. I was almost about to become a lawyer. Like, I did half of a law degree, and I had to really interrogate myself and say, do I even feel happy? And will I be happy? And the answer was no. I actually felt very miserable in that space, because I found that despite the fact that I really value law and what it's aiming to do for people in society, I just felt like it was too methodical and too rigid for my mind, which is more abstract and more creative. So I took a shot at myself and followed my passions, which was hard as a young person, especially with the pressure of family. And a lot of us come from multicultural ethnic families where there's this pressure to really follow this narrow, straight academic pathway. And I had to be willing to disappoint my parents temporarily, who didn't understand why I worked so hard to get into this law degree, and all of a sudden I'm leaving it. But fast forward to today, they actually say that they're proud of me. So I'm happy. I'm happy because of that, because I've followed my convictions, and I trusted that as a young person with my whole life ahead of me, and also my networks and my grounding in this country, that I could really do anything and be anything that I want. So even though my parents didn't fully believe it initially, which I had grace for because I understood where they were coming from, in their perspective. I had other systems around me through mentorship and school, teachers, and other things like that really supported me to cultivate my genuine passion. So again, speaking from that young person perspective. So yeah, I started a platform in COVID in 2020 called Below the Surface. And essentially, I just wanted a platform. Sorry?
God. No.
Oh, I just wanted a platform to be able to explore the world around me, but using different forms of creative expression, because I'm not someone who likes to be boxed in. I like singing, I like dancing, I like photography, I like conversation, I like visual art. And so that's why I started this platform. And I did a few projects like a magazine and podcasting, and all of it really explored different social issues, but using that creative means as the tool, because I think that's also very powerful. Yeah, this was a part of my bio, which was read out. So as a young professional now, who's very much working in the field, how do I relate to this idea of playing an active role in creating and promoting peace? Well, I guess I relate through the platform that I started, Below the Surface, through the Voices of Australia podcast. That podcast I was actually invited to co-host it with the CEO of that organization, and the whole purpose of the podcast is to explore what does a socially cohesive society in Australia look like, and from different perspectives, because we didn't want to define it, but we wanted to give our guests an opportunity to do that. And I think this was me taking an active role in creating and promoting peace, because we were giving a voice to different people in different sectors and from different backgrounds to actually tell us and show us what it will take for them to feel like the society is cohesive and peaceful. And one of the things that kept coming up was a sense of belonging. Whenever someone feels a sense of belonging, they're much more in a position to actually contribute to society. So I think that's also worth noting in terms of the role of youth in family and society, is that we need to cultivate that sense of belonging within the youth so that they feel comfortable enough to express themselves. As a young professional now, what do I think about the role of youth in family and society in enhancing and contributing to the culture and community and society? Well, I think at their best, I really admire and feel inspired by the youth. I think they're so refreshing. They come with a fresh energy. Their view of life and life's possibilities are so positive and optimistic. And that we know, especially when you listen to psychologists, like positivity, optimism is actually a very important key and part in actually getting to where you want. So them having that naturally, and I guess a lot of the time it's because they haven't sort of internalized some of the harsh realities of the world. Like it's an energy to feed off, and they end up not having so many filters when it comes to expressing themselves and viewing the world in a positive way. But at their worst, I worry about the youth and the ripple effect that their actions have on community. I'm positioned in a youth centre in a lower socioeconomic suburb in Melbourne, and there's a lot of crime. And in fact, like a lot of crime is happening currently from the youth, and they tend to be between like 14 to 18. And I've spent a lot of time trying to understand why, talk to young people. And I feel like a lot of the reasons is because of that lack of self-belonging, that peer pressure, their poor decision-making, substance abuse, which they're not necessarily protected from. Sometimes it's maybe because they just choose to do it. But truly speaking, when you're a young person, I remember my dad was strict enough for me to, yes, at times maybe lie about what I was doing as a young person, because we all do that. Tell a little white lie, especially when you have strict parents. But the grounding that I had from my parents really meant that wherever I went outside in the world, I knew what boundaries looked like and what would be too far. And I feel like, at their worst, youth can be a bit of a menace to society because their actions do impact community, and it impacts family. And they really do lack that ability to have foresight. So when they don't have as much wisdom as other people do, and they're not guided and protected, and they don't have someone to look up to as well, then they can be a disadvantage to us, or it could be a concern to society, I would say. To share some of my best practices and success stories with the youth. Bridging the gap. I think it's really important to bridge the gap between youth and family, and then with the family and the youth. So I think, especially what I'm seeing in Australia, and it probably is also the case in other countries, there's like a generational disconnect between young people and their families. If you think about young people who were actually raised, born in like Australia, for example, but their parents were born and raised in a country in Africa, like Ethiopia, then sometimes there can be cultural misunderstandings or disconnects. And I feel like that can be the reason at times for there being a lack of connection, a lack of respect in the household, and then that has its ripple effect in the community. So I think that it's important to bridge the gap and hold community conversations, facilitate connection opportunities between parents and young people, storytelling, so that they can really grasp where they actually come from. And I think that we shouldn't also leave the adults behind as well, because a lot of, let's say, migrant families, they come here and they really do their best to survive and give their young people an opportunity at doing even better. But unless they're actually equipped with skill set as well and looked at with value more also as much as the youth, then you can't have that back and forth. Like an example would be during COVID, a lot of parents had to actually like homeschool their children because their children were doing school online. But the problem is a lot of these parents, given their educational experience and background, weren't able to actually play that part. So I think we need to actually sort of somehow in community assess how we can build up the capacity of both parties. Bringing young people's perspectives to the forefront. I think we need to back young people with training, support, and mentorship. And we also need to action their perspectives in some sort of way. We can't just ask what they think, but show them that we're doing something about what they think, whether it be we're going to facilitate discussions with the right people in government, or we're going to actually have a direct pathway to policy reform. Giving young people agency to actually share what they think, because they often have very insightful perspectives, which they pick up. And I think sometimes we overlook that a little bit. In other words, make young people leaders, because they are the future leaders, as Joy said. How do they play an active role in decision making? So an example of some of the things that take place in the youth center I work at is I was invited to participate in a series of focus group and roundtable discussions with youth to express what we believe the next generation of young people and creatives want. And then that went on to inform the funding of the arts sector, which then plays out to be all the different sort of programs and funding that's available for the young people. So there has to be, that conversation or that exploration or research element, and then the implementation and action. Also, I think it's very important to note that young people express themselves when they feel safe, and when they feel a sense of acceptance for where they are and who they are. And I think that we need to be mindful of, when we're interacting with young people, to actually cultivate that environment of safety, to actually take a personable approach and tailor our approach to them and to what we've understood about them. And genuine relationship is important because they're very energetically sensitive. Nurturing youth talent and giving them a platform to curate and express. They have an abundance of talent, and I feel like one thing I notice just from the different events that I curate and the things that I help within the community is that when we give youth an opportunity to express their talent and be recognized for it, they often hold on to that and then go on to cultivate it more and do more with it. And just like Yezu said, like they then will even think about their talent in relation to what they want to impact in the world. So really putting them in that position to actually be able to do that through opportunity. And then finally, training and employment. So the youth can be a help to themselves and their family. I think if we train them up to work, like I started work at KFC at 14 years old, and I was able to save money, contribute to my household expenses at times when my mom wasn't, when she was struggling. And I think that that's a great thing because you learn responsibility, you learn how to handle the toughness of life. And I know that there needs to be balance in that because we shouldn't also burden our youth with too much, but it can actually be really good. And more youth centers, more creative hubs, more government funding to actually do all of these things. And teach young people to embrace themselves. I think if you teach them to love themselves, to understand where they come from, then that has a really positive flow-on effect, because a lot of bullying that happens in society is often because of a projection of pain, of stress, or some sort of a lack in a young person's life. So finally, when youth go off the rails, they can damage family and society, but when they do well, they are the foundation for peace within the community. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Tesema. It was also very inspirational to hear all of these practical steps that you've actually shared with us about the youth being at their worst and at their best, and also about sharing all of these steps on how to create this safer space for the youth, for them to feel being able to share what they have for the world, and making young people leaders. And it is very, we're very grateful that you have told us about this. Yeah, thank you very much for that. So let us move on to the Q&A session. So first of all, I would like to thank all of the participants for taking the time to ask the questions. So now I would like to pick up a few questions for our panelists. The first question is for Ms. Ikomoinen. You have very rich experiences. What do you think is the most important investment, maybe skills or character, for youth development? Ms. Ikomoinen, we can't hear you.
Oh, sorry, I was trying to unmute myself.
Yeah, that's okay now.
Sorry, what was the question again?
You have very rich experience, and the participant is asking you, what do you think is the most important investment for youth development, such as maybe skills or character? We see that probably the connection is poor. So let us check the connection a little bit later. Maybe we'll move to the next question for Dr. Yachuvu. Thank you for your inspiring story. And the question is, how does your childhood contribute to become a musician?
So my parents, I think, exposed me to music from an early age. My mother is a soprano, so she. The reason why I was born in Germany was because both my parents were studying there. She studied singing, and even though my father is a professor of forest management, he loved singing. So my household was always full of music, and my parents would bring me to concerts. So I think just purely being exposed to it. And they sent me to a preschool, and apparently to a normal preschool. I came home crying because I really didn't want to be there. But then my mom found another school in which they incorporated music. So that's how I actually started violin, because at the time that was the smallest and the cheapest instrument that they could find. And yeah, it was just through that and having the opportunity to actually have an instrument to try was the reason why I started playing, and in my case, continued to become a professional. So I think for everyone, it's important to have that, but also to be taught the joy of making music. And I remember my old teacher would tell me, how lucky are you to have the tool to make people happy? So I think it was the influence of my parents and my teacher kind of enhancing that.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much. Miss Ikmoning, I will repeat the question. What do you think is the most important investment, such as skills or character, for youth development?
Thank you for the question. Sorry about the other time. I think I had network issues. The most important investment, in my opinion, is character. Because when you build the character, then the skills is very easy to learn. So the character, in my opinion, is the most important investment in any child and in any, before they even get to the stage of adolescence. So when those characters have been instilled in the child, growing up in a nuclear family of love and of discipline and of care and of confidence, then they can learn the skills. The skills the skills is very easy to learn. But if they don't build that character in the family, in the house, and then they go off into the world, starting from schooling, the school builds the character for them. So when they have that character built in the house, when they go to school, they're able to stand their ground. So if there's any opinion that is contrary to what they've learned in the house, or in their family, or any opinion contrary to what their parents have taught them, they question it. And that's what builds confidence in children. That's what builds confidence in the youth. Because when they go out, and then for example, they go out and then someone tries to entice them to join a gang, or someone tries to entice them to do what they've not done before, they question it. And if that character has been built right from the start, then they can go back home to say to their parents, this happened in school today, Mom. What do you think about it? Do you think, what should I do? So that character is very important to be instilled in the child first, because I believe any skills at all, whatever skills it is, can be learned outside. But the character is the most important in any youth's life. Thank you.
Thank you, that's true indeed. The next question is for Mr. Emma. Thank you, Lydia, and I loved your voice. What was the most challenging thing for you when you first started your media agency, and how could you overcome it?
The most challenging thing is being a one-man show initially. So having this dream to bring certain projects to life, but then understanding that it requires many elements. So for example, if I know that I wanted to host a conversational series, I would also need a videographer, maybe an editor, a photographer, and that was the most challenging thing, is when you're limited in resources, particularly like financial resources, it's quite tough. It's and also when you do value paying people for their time and honoring people for their time. So that was tough, but then I learned eventually that it's important to use the people around you just in the same way that they use you. And this isn't in some sort of transactional, selfish way, but that's genuinely the way it is. I find myself very often feeding into other people's projects just naturally because I enjoy that. And it took a lot for me to kind of really be like, okay, Lydia, let's also apply this for yourself. The power of collaboration, of community is really important when you're building a platform and when you're starting from scratch. And of course, the time will come, or times will come, where you'll be able to honor them in different ways. So it was finding that balance for me, to be honest with you.
Thank you, Mr. Emma. The next question is for Dr. Wu. Bravo, Dr. Wu. Music indeed is one of the most powerful tools to reach people's hearts without words. What are your plans for achieving world peace through music in the future? Do you have any more musical projects planned?
Thank you for the question. I will, so I think I will just continue doing what I have been doing. And for me, in my case, it wasn't ever a grand planning of with this goal in mind, but I knew what I wanted, and opportunities came to me, and when there were people, I would interact with people and share my passion and ideas. So little by little, all these projects that I talked about came about. So what I'm hoping to do is just continue doing what I do, and hope to meet different people who have the same passion to perform, but also to support. And yeah, I think it's just like the little wishes that I live with every day, and that kind of turns into something big in the end. And yeah, nothing grand at the moment, but I'm hoping that all these little performances that I do, and especially the festival that I put together in Korea, just by having people listen to the music that we are able to give, that will, like, little by little make people happier, and in the broader sense make a better world and a peaceful world.
Yeah, thank you very much. I can hear that in the chat we already have some people reaching out to collaborate with you. So maybe you'll text them. So the next question we have from Isi Kumoinen. What do you think? How should parents raise their children to be contributors to world peace?
Hi, Tanya. Thank you for that question. Parents, they've got a big role to play in the life of every child. If any parent bring a child to the world, that's a huge responsibility for that parent. And so that responsibility encompasses everything concerning the child. So before that child steps out of the house, it's the duty of the parent to give the child everything that they need, that they would need out in the world as well. It's the duty of the parents to provide for the child. It's the duty of the parents to give the child that stability in the house. So for that child to be peaceful in the world, that child needs to experience what peace feels like. So what does peace feels like for the child in the house? If there's no peace in the house, then it's going to be really difficult for the child to be able to project peace to the world. So I think, as with everything, as with love, as with discipline, peace in the house is very important. If a child comes from a broken home, or comes from a home where there's no stability, where there's always problems in the family, where there's always problems between his or her parents, he's going to project that outside when he goes out in the world. So I think peace needs to be experienced first in the house. So it still takes us back to family. If that child experiences a peaceful family, a peaceful dad and mom, a peaceful siblings, the child is able to project that peace outside in the world. But if the child experiences a house full of acrimony, a house full of quarrels and fighting, it's going to put in that child, all that is not supposed to be there. So if that child experiences all that bad angle, the opposite of peace, if that child goes out, he or she rather projects what they've learned from the house. So it still boils down to learning and instilling discipline and character in the child. And then they learn from their parents. Every child learns by what they see rather than by what they hear. So if you say, do as I say, not as I do, it's not going to work. Child learns by seeing. And when they see that in their house or in their household, there's peace in the house between the parents, there's harmony, there's tranquility, it projects outside wherever they go to. They become a peaceful person to society. They become peaceful to their friends. They become peaceful in their own families when they're old enough to have their families. And then they become peace to the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the answer. And the last question will be for Mr. Sema. You've spoken about the safe space, creating safe space for in family for the youth. And what do you recommend for youth, for a person who do not feel safe at home? Maybe you've met some people like this because there are not so many youth who can feel maybe successful and happy in their family. Maybe what, in your opinion, should you recommend to these people?
Yeah, so I guess I was speaking more from the perspective of a professional who's dealing with the youth in the community and actually ensuring that they have that safe space. But I can still speak to your question. I think it's a really tough dynamic, isn't it? When you're talking about how do you ensure a safe space in someone's household, a young person's household, when you have nothing to do with that household. I think it's important to really help young people understand what their systems of support are. So I don't know how other countries work, but I know that in Australia, there's youth centers, there are government bodies and different organizations that allow the youth to literally just walk into their doors and to express themselves. And then there are services that they can then be referred to that can follow up in a more direct way of what's going on in the household. I think it's tricky because it's really hard to understand family dynamics and what might be appropriate, because sometimes things can go a bit too far. And we know that youth are removed from their families and for different things, but ultimately there would be a level of investigation that takes place. And I think we have to be able to trust the system at that point, because if a young person is expressing a lack of safety in their household and they're expressing that to a professional, then they need to know that they have support outside of the house. So I think that really understanding what those systems of support are, or where those organizations are, what are those services, that's really important. And then reminding the youth, they don't have to remember all of that off the top of their head, but giving them at least one point of contact who can then refer them elsewhere is really, really important.
That's true. Thank you very much for that. And due to our time limitation, it's unfortunately time that I would like to close the Q&A session. Apologies if we don't get to your question. You can always email us after the webinar. So thank you all for joining us today, especially our panelists, for presenting and sharing your stories with us. Each story proved that young people have the power and potential to make a positive difference in their families and communities. We look forward to another opportunity to share the stories of other young professionals. Before we close the session, I would like to invite you to the Women's Federation for World Peace International Young Professionals team. This team is a creative think tank at the international level to practice cultural diplomacy, which is the exchange of ideas, information, art, language, and other cultural aspects in order to deepen mutual understanding. We meet every fourth Saturday of the month at 10 p.m. Korean time, and the next meeting will be held on October 21st. You can find more information on our website and contact us via the email you see on the screen. We are happy to send all the information and collaborate together with you. Now, I would like to officially close our webinar. So thank you very much for participating today from all over the world. Have a good day and night.